Welcome to Life After the Fire, the preeminent podcast for all things related to having an amazing life after the fire service. My name is Chris Phelps. I'm your host. I'm joined today by somebody who was referred to the show, Larry Doelling. Am I saying the last name right? Doelling?
Doelling is Chinese.
Maybe
not.
So, Larry, tell us a little bit about yourself and why somebody would think you that we should talk to you on the show.
I have no idea why anybody'd want to talk to me. I'm an old retired guy. I retired from Palm Beach County Fire Rescue about 28 plus years, and I got into it late. I was 31 years old. So I'm one of the late bloomer guys. Did some time in the Army Reserve and the Air Force. I was in charge of the CISM team for a number of years, critical incident stress management. Mental health is very important to me. It's been an honor to go to a lot of different places. Like they talked to some officers after the Pulse nightclub shooting, and I did a lot of work through Chris Bader with Coral Springs after the Stoneman Douglas High School shootings, and that plus just all kinds of day-to-day responses all over Palm Beach County. And then I got a master's degree in social work, which is the same degree that a lot of the EAP clinicians have for a lot of departments. So on paper, I'm qualified to be a counselor, an EAP counselor. And maybe that's it. I don't know.
All right. Makes sense. Well, let's dive into some of the mental health aspects. You know, obviously this is about having a great life after the fire.
Right.
So it's definitely one of those things that could, not only could it cut a career short, but there's definitely an aspect to, or an importance to, mental health after the fire service. Just losing that, you have a tendency to lose that connection with the guys and gals you've been working with. Let's dive into some of that. So what would you say, or let's talk a little bit about the on the job mental health stuff.
It's very important to maintain yourself physically. When I first started, physical fitness was important through my experience with the Army, and then going through Recruit Academy and all that. But at that time, this was the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. It was I'm sure in your experience too, it's just sort of a suck it up type mentality. We didn't really talk about anything, and there's some weird stuff goes on. It's a very, I had explained to me, it's a very strange job. We check some trucks out in the morning. We've got some paperwork we have to do. You do a little meeting and maybe some training, and then after that, your job is to just hang around and wait for something bad to happen to somebody else, and it's very strange. So after a while, that stuff can add up. It's like certain. Is that coming across on you? That little ring?
No.
Okay. Every day you go in every shift, as it was explained to me, is just a little grain of sand that gets put in your rucksack on your back. Just all the stuff, the sleep deprivation, the schedule work, just being pulled away from things, just everything that you see. And then once in a while, you get these rather large boulders, the big calls.
Sure.
Those calls are big rocks that go in your rucksack, and they can really slow you down quite a bit. A lot of these things, you're always going to have that rucksack. It's always going to have these things in it. And you're going to accumulate quite a bit of things over a career of 20, 25, 30 years. But again, like it was explained to me, a lot of these things, especially these larger calls, it's like a tattoo. You're always going to have that tattoo. But as you digest it, and if you can you get a healthy outlook on it, you can look at that tattoo and not have that emotional reaction. Over time, you've got the event, and then you've got your emotional reaction, and they're together in the very beginning. But after time, they split apart. So you can look at the event, you can think about the event, and you don't have this emotional reaction. That's what you're going for. And that's how you move forward. Your goal is to have a great career, make it to the end. You point to the calendar on the day that you want to retire. And then after that, it's to live long enough to be a burden on the retirement system that you're in. And I think that's important. You have to retire physically and mentally healthy. Sammy Eaton was on here. I listened to his podcast. I know Sammy very well. He's a great guy. He does a lot of great work. Yeah. He's talking about the physical aspects of retiring, but the mental aspects, you got to retire with all your marbles, man. Things start to fly apart and you end up getting a divorce. Your kids hate you. You get up every morning and you got to do a couple of shots of whiskey, just get out of bed. What kind of life is that, man? You have to be able to enjoy that retirement.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a great analogy. You talk about, filling up the rucksack. I've always been taught the filling up your trash can, every call you go on is, a little wadded up piece of paper thrown in your trash can. Some are the smaller pieces of paper. Some are, throwing a phone book in your trash can.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never heard that the way you spoke of how the two are connected, the emotional reaction and the event, and how, we want to, work to, I guess, bridge the gap, or not necessarily bridge the gap, but create a gap, I guess is the appropriate term there, right?
You just want to have a healthy outlook on things. You want to be able to process things and digest them well. Right now, everywhere you go in your day, you're receiving information. You're receiving through your five senses, and it's coming into you. And this is my second podcast I've ever done, but it's not that unusual. I'm just talking to you. It's a Zoom meeting. It's not that big a deal. So everything that's happening right now for you and for me, we have a place to put all this in our brains. There's a little file cabinet in your brain, and you can put these things away, and then we can go and work on the rest of our day or whatever else we can do. And then at night, hopefully this podcast talking to me isn't going to keep you up at night worrying about it, right? Because exactly. You have a place to put all of this that we have experienced. I'm going to go in and feed my dog later on today. I've done this a million times. I know where to put that experience. We're putting groceries away. I know how to put it. When you go to these larger calls in specific terms, you don't have any place to put that stuff. This is so outside of your moral injury is a term you see quite a bit. That call basically was some sort of moral injury to you, and you have nowhere to put it. So you're sitting there with this pile of paperwork, which is that event, and you've got nowhere to put it. Right. So you're trying to function throughout your day with a stack of paperwork you're carrying around with you. And you can't go to sleep with it because you can't put it down. You can't do other things properly because you can't put it down. You can't interact with the people around you at home. You can't even tell your spouse sometimes about this pile of paperwork that you're carrying around, this pile of crap, because you don't have that place. And I got involved in the counseling. If you want to get into that, we can. But I got the degree because I was at a very busy station years ago, and we had a number of different, they call it a CISM call out. You're familiar with CISM?
Oh yeah.
Okay. If you're not, basically it's a group of volunteers, and they're generally first responders. My team was Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. It wasn't, it was Palm Beach County, not Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. So we had lifeguards, we had, fish and wildlife people, cops, all that kind of stuff were on the team. We would respond to other agencies along with Palm Beach County. Right. But I was at a busy station. We had a number of different call outs for the CISM team, which meant they came to our station and they did a debriefing, defusing with us. And after a while, the person who's in charge of it, Chuck Salustri, great guy, since retired and quite happy, he asked me to be on the team, which I thought was pretty amazing. I really never thought about that kind of thing before. I never thought about mental health or anything. A few years later, he retired, and he came to me and he said, "Would you like to be the team coordinator?" Which basically is the person in charge. So I said, "Yeah, sure," and that's how I ended up doing it. But it, and then that's how I came to know every CISM team has a team clinician. So I had Dr. Tehan. He's also in charge of the uh, social worker program at Berry University. Very smart lady, doctorate degree and all that. And I got into the mental health aspect of it a lot through her and some of the different seminars. And coming from the suck it up generation, I learned very quickly it ain't rocket science, man. It ain't rocket science. You're not going to sit on a couch and do all this weird hokey pokey stuff. All you're going to do is you're going to learn to put that paperwork somewhere. You're going to find a file cabinet for it somewhere. You're going to find a way to look at that tattoo and not have that emotional reaction. You're going to just find a way to process this stuff so you can sleep at night. And so you can not come in the house and start kicking the crap out of the dog when you get home, stuff like that. It's not that complicated. If I can understand it, it can't be that complicated. So mental health, it's very important. You've got to retire with all your marbles. So that's long version of how I ended up here. But it's not that tough, man. It really isn't.
I think
there's nothing to be afraid of.
Sure. And I think back to my career and getting that paperwork, and sometimes, sometimes it was, just a single sheet of paper.
Yeah.
Other times it was a phone book, and the phone books, those were large events, and they were easy to detect that there was a need for CISM.
I bet you still remember those calls, right?
Oh yeah.
Do you still have the emotional response at this time? Or are you able to look at it and think about it without that?
Yeah, I was very fortunate in that I've always had the ability to separate it.
Right. What was your expectations of this job when you first started?
I started very young. I was the kid that would parents would bring by the fire station to see the fire trucks at 5 years old, and was the one that never grew out of it. So I got started in the fire service as a junior volunteer at like the age of 13.
Yeah.
So I grew up in it.
You knew what you were getting into.
I knew what I was getting into at a very young age. Nobody really knows or at that time, nobody really knew or understood the mental health aspect of it.
Right.
But I was fortunate in all of the, when I had those big phone book, as I'll call them, phone book calls, those big calls, it was, we had CISM and it helped to talk stuff out, and never had an incident that really impacted me to that degree.
Right. That's important.
I had instances where, you second guess yourself, did I do this right? I guess I kind of had more of an emotional reaction to and kept those longer, but nothing that was ever, debilitating to the point of, doing something unhealthy.
Right. Everyone over time, whether you're a firefighter or any other career, you develop armor. You develop armor to keep the world at a distance and that kind of stuff. So when certain things happen, you've got that armor to protect you. Just the fact that you're in a fire station with the rest of the crew and stuff like that, it helps, and your training, your competence, I think, helps you a lot. We'll talk about that in a minute if you want to. But every once in a while, everybody's armor is like Swiss cheese. There's holes in it, right? Sure. I do not have any children that I know of. I haven't got any Father's Day cards so far, but my daughter is my stepdaughter. I met her when she was 4 years old. Uh-huh. And what I'm getting at is most of the calls that affect people the most are a reflection of themselves. And to be very blunt, a lot of the calls, things that we got called for, were dead kid calls.
Yeah.
And if we're having a beer, not in front of everyone here, we could both sit down if you wanted to and talk about some pretty gross stuff that we've seen, and a lot of it involves children.
Yeah.
I've had that same experience that you've had. I have not had a call pierce my arm yet. I've been lucky.
Right.
But I certainly understand when I look over and we've just been on a 4-year-old kid call and I see Joey, he's got a 5-year-old kid, and I see he's not doing very good, that kind of thing. I understand that completely. And your leadership, as I was a captain in a fire station since 2002, when you are able to process these things and understand them within yourself, that's your first step. And then you can see it in yourself, how things are affecting you. The next step is to look out into, number one, your crew, and see how these things are affecting them, or anything is affecting them, whether it's just on a fire or you see one of these phone book calls, we'll call it.
Yeah.
And then see in the general public, you understand when you get off the fire engine and somebody's screaming and yelling and lost their mind. Well, that's not that usual person. They have been affected by this. So you need to stay calm and not get drawn into that world, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why I got this little tattoo. It's a sword. So you are on one side of the sword and how you view the world, and then everybody else is on the other side of the world, other side of the sword. Yeah. So you have to be able to apply these things that you learn about mental health to other people, especially when you're in a leadership position.
Yeah.
And I used to after we'd have these calls, whether we had a formal debriefing with CISM or we would just have kitchen table therapy at the fire station.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, I would call every single member of the crew into my office alone, close the door, and I'd tell them, I said, you realize this zone, we've got a 3 to 5 minute response time anywhere we go. And you know how the call gods operate. Can you go back in service right now in 3 to 5 minutes? Can you run that same call that we just ran? Whatever horrific thing just happened. And if the answer isn't immediately yes, then we need to think about you doing something else. That's a whole nother thing. You don't necessarily have to send people home because you don't know what home is. You're assuming home is a stable environment. They might want to just stay and spend the shift there. But if they're not ready to run that same call, if they're not 100%, then, they need to think about doing something else, at least getting their gear off the truck.
Yeah.
And then spend the night in the fire station. They go home with everybody else, because that's something to think about too.
Sure.
But always have your finger on the pulse of the crew when it comes to these larger event calls, or not necessarily large event calls, but significant events, we call them generally in CI.
Well, and we've talked on a previous show how those big calls are those are easy to detect or realize that somebody needs that CISM, that peer counseling, if you will. It's the smaller incidents that seem innocuous to anybody else, but for whatever reason they strike a nerve with somebody.
Right. Everything's a reflection on yourself. So if you have, I've had calls where it's the typical deceased elderly female, and this is in South Florida. This is something we see all the time. But this person was hugely affected by it. And I was lucky enough, one of the other members of the crew said something to me. And this person was basically raised by their grandmother. And that event reminded them of their grandmother quite a bit. And it knocked them down a little bit. So you depend on other people to let you in on these things. Everybody in a fire station, I think, has a responsibility for leadership, not just the captain or the lieutenant. And it's your job to watch out for the rest of your crew, whether you're the rookie or you've been there 20 years. So keep an eye out for the other people and their mental health and how they're doing,
And
These
what
are,
are some of the outward signs that you would expect or should be on the lookout for,
well,
uh, and even that small call?
yeah,
or-
I,
or
I,
lack of-
I like to look at, if you go online, there's all kinds of articles and that on PTSD and things like that. That's another rabbit hole we can go down. There's a thing called the DSM-5 now. That's the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual that all from psychiatrists all the way down to us social workers use, and it's got PTSD listed in there. If you flip the page, there's another thing called acute stress syndrome, and there's a list of all these different signs, symptoms, or whatever of PTSD. There's lists all over the place. Difficulty sleeping, intrusive thoughts, increased alcohol. You can look all this stuff up. They're all over the place. If you get a list of these things, I like to tell people when you talk to your firefighters, when you talk to your family, whatever, if you walk up there and say, "Hey, Chris, you doing okay, man? That call was kind of rough." What are you going to say? 90% of the time, what are you going to say?
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm fine, right? I'm good, right? Okay, good for you, man. That's okay. Now we can, if you get that list, think of that list as a list of questions. It's not a list of bullet statements. So, I see you the next shift. "Hey, Chris, how you doing?" You're going to say, "I'm fine."
I'm good.
All right. And then I can throw it down. There's a bullet comment in there about not sleeping. So I can throw it down. I'm not going to ask you how you're sleeping. I'm going to say, "I don't know about you, man. I went home. I didn't sleep too good that next night. How about you?" You ask them a question. You tell them, make yourself a little vulnerable. Explain to them you're having a little bit of an issue. It depends how far down that rabbit hole you want to go, but and then they'll maybe open up a little bit. Or, "How you doing, Chris? I don't know about you, man. I keep thinking about that call last shift. I was washing the dishes last night at home and it just popped into my head." That's an intrusive thought, So you can use these things to ask people about them. It's a tool. And that's much more effective than saying, "Hey, man, how you doing?" Because nobody's going to say shit to you, 99% of the time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what would you say if your captain came up to you and said, "How you doing?"
Um,
Especially if you're a younger guy. I mean, you got into this job young.
Yeah.
You're 22 years old. You're going to tell me that you're not doing too good with that call?
It's not likely.
No, why not?
Some of it's pride,
Yeah. Yeah. Not much pride around the fire station, right? Or ego.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not gonna show any vulnerability.
Exactly.
That was practically a statement we had made up on T-shirts in my battalion. Show no weakness.
Yeah.
You don't want to show weakness. But this is the
Yeah.
other side of it. There is a time to show a little vulnerability and a little bit of weakness. You're all human. If you try, it's like you get that balloon and you push down the balloon, keep all those feelings inside and internalize everything. What's going to happen? The balloon's going to push up somewhere else, right?
Yep.
All of these things, all that crap in that rucksack, the phone books, the grains of sand, the boulders, all that shit, it's going to wear you down, right? Eventually, it's going to pop up somewhere else.
Yeah.
Whether, again, the quart of vodka every morning or stuff like that, or lashing out at people, stuff like that. So you got to be able to process this stuff, man. You got to be happy,
Yeah.
Try. I don't know.
That's good.
So, yeah.
It's a great way to explain it. Great way to, a great way to reach out to your fellow crewmates, and pose that question, and test the waters, I guess, if you will, and understand that, it is, just like anything, we're a team, and when somebody on the team is impacted, we're all impacted.
Right.
So,
another happy topic. I'm fairly certain, used to be Jeff Dill used to keep statistics on this stuff with his Firefighter Behavioral Alliance. And you're familiar with this? And cause of death of firefighters. Number one cause of death of firefighters around the country. You know,
I
it's
don't.
not line of duty death, and it's not cancer.
Wow.
It's suicide.
The number
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly certain it still is.
that's pretty profound.
Yeah.
So this is vitally important to getting to the other side, to getting to have a happy and healthy life after the fire service. Can't overemphasize it enough. So of our 10 listeners that are out there, if
my mom might be listening, so there's probably 11 now.
Okay, good. So if anybody is listening and wanted to see or get some more resources, what would be a really good place to send them to?
Just Google CISM.
Obviously they could Google it, but I don't know if there's anywhere specific that would be your the first thing that you would think of.
Well, you could Google CISM, and you're going to have the international ICISF, international crap. I can't remember what it stands for. ICISF. Basically, that's the body that runs CISM. It's run by some doctors and stuff like that, and it's got a lot of information in there about contacting a CISM team, setting up a CISM team, and all that. The IAFF has gotten into peer support, which is very similar to CISM. They're almost identical. Yep. So you can look at the IAFF website and look for peer support. There's a number of different things there. There's a chaplains program, fire service chaplains. That's another aspect for it's a more spiritual type thing. Your own EAP works out quite good. My wife is a founding member of a thing. It's a group on Facebook, and it's called the Red Line Sisterhood. It's very important that your spouse is also part of this too. They're all affected by these things too. They're affected by the job.
Sure.
This is a group only for spouses, significant others of firefighters. So you'll see that on there. There's all kinds of information on there, and it's a support group and things like that. It's really good. So there's somewhere in there, there's something for everyone. Your department should have a number of these different things. This should be like a smorgasbord or a buffet that you go down with your little tray and you pick out what you need,
Yeah.
Maybe the chaplain thing isn't for you. Maybe the chaplain thing is exactly what you need.
Yeah.
I would strongly suggest that if you don't have a CISM team or a peer support, you start one. This is it's not that tough. I really get annoyed when I hear firefighters talking about headquarters, having worked at headquarters for a couple of years, how they should do this, they should do that, they weren't ready, they messed this up. There is no they in the fire department.
Yeah.
When I'm on a crew, when I've got my crew out there, we're on a call, my battalion, whatever, there is no they. It's all we. We need to cut a hole in that roof. We need to go in and put that fire out. We need to go save those babies. Yeah. Right? You have been given a task within that, but apply that same mentality to your headquarters. Yeah. They aren't going to do shit. I'll tell you that right now. They at headquarters are not sitting around their desk waiting, gosh, I wish some knucklehead from the field would bring us a problem with no answer. Nobody's doing that. Everybody's busy. They've got stuff to do. So if you want something done, you have to do it. You have to start these initiatives yourself. And it's not that tough. I did it part-time for all those years, and it's not that bad. I would also strongly suggest that you get to know the departments around you and network with the departments around you. Chris Bader, great guy. He started the firefighter. What's that group he's got? You know what it is. The Alliance. But it's a networking group. It's anything you want. If you want to, put something out in the group for nozzles, who's using what nozzles, you get it back. He's also got all these different things, but he networked all this together. I got to know him, and then when they had the Stoneman Douglas shooting in his department, he wasn't calling some guy off a website in Palm Beach County. He was calling Larry Doelling, his buddy that we knew. Right. And we had that relationship. And then we called Mario and some of the guys down in Metro Dade. And they all came together and they did a terrific job helping those guys out. So it's important that you network with other departments and other organizations around. The other thing is, if you have like 3 people on your CISM team, what if 2 of them are on the call?
Yeah.
It pretty much takes them out, you know. So you need to expand your horizons a little bit. The other thing I would suggest too is actually vet your EAP people and vet your rehab centers. You know, the IAF has one, the Center for Excellence, and there's a few of them around, but it varies quite a bit. You know, there's quite a spectrum of these kind of places. So if you can vet them ahead of time, that's a really good idea. The EAP people, I know the collaborative. That's what Chris Bader put together. The collaborative. We put together a clinician awareness program, and it's been put on around Florida, and it's kind of cool. I'm kind of proud of it. We bring in your clinicians for 2-3 days, and the ones that volunteer, and we basically teach them what it's like to be a firefighter. And we have it out at a fire academy, or anybody who's got a training tower and that kind of stuff. You do some classroom stuff with the terminology and that kind of thing. And then we dress them up in bunker gear, and we run some mock drills with some fake smoke and rescuing babies. And, you know, you bring the little baby out and stick them in the back of a rescue, and they've got another clinician in there with the paramedics in the back of the rescue and all that. And then we debrief afterwards, and they see what that's like. And then they also spend an afternoon in a fire station. And so it gets them to know the culture and that kind of thing. Yeah. I know 2, probably 3 guys who've had to have their session stopped because they made the clinician ill telling their stories, you know. And I guarantee you and I could, you know, sit down and come up with some pretty gross stuff to tell these people. Yeah. And if you're not ready for it, if they just saw the cash from getting another pool of clients, that's not the people you want. Right. So if you screen them a little bit ahead of time, some happy thoughts there. So,
well, Larry, I'm really glad that we got put together. I think that there's, you know, a host of things that we could obviously touch on or keep this thing going. We're barely scratching the surface here, but I want to really thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. It looks like you got a pretty cool life going there. You got some fun
amazing
stuff doing there. That's not just a wallpaper. That's the real backdrop in Larry's garage there, and got some really fun stuff going on there. So I want to thank you for your service. Thank you for pouring into our 10 subscribers and
11.
My mom. Hope we can get together next time you're down here. I'd love to shake your hand.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. I hope it wasn't too much of a downer, but I got to tell you, if you do it right, you know, the retirement does not suck, man. It's amazing. I love it.
That's right. So, and then for our listeners that want to get connected to us, like, follow, and share our show. And you can reach us at info@latfpodcast.com. It's info@latfpodcast.com. And we'll see you on the next one. Take care.